大家好，歡迎翻
Hello，
到嚟呢個新地球事務所啊！咁今日咧，再一次啦，大家見到咁嘅 setting 啦，就知有越洋嘉賓啦。我哋嘅老師呢個好資深啦，其實帶住好多愛啦，亦都話帶住好多色彩同智慧嘅老師啦。咁啊，佢係 Rosy Aronson 老師。咁咧，今日我就邀請咗呢位老師嚟同我哋咧做一啲有關於Gene Keys 啦，同埋一個好新嘅概念啊，叫 Wisdom Keeper 啊，即係智慧守護者啊，究竟係啲乜嘢啦？我點樣啟動我內在嘅智慧守護者咧？咁我今日邀請個老師入嚟嘅。咁啊，Stephen，我哋幾時識老師㗎？
Wow, we just mentioned how long we've been, friends and compare in the whole Gene Keys journey. Maybe like 7 years
咁
when we
啊，啱啱
first
Stephen 就
met
講
in
啦。
Scotland in the Star Pearl retreat. We just chat about, how long we haven't been seeing face to face.
咁我哋好耐冇見老師，啱啱 Stephen 有講啦，喺2007年咧，咁我哋去咗Scotland 啦，咁喺嗰度
2015年
係啦，嗰度有個 retreat 咧，咁就喺嗰度認識老師嘅。So welcome, Rosie.
Oh, thank
We
you
are more
so
than
much.
happy to have you here with us. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here too. I love you too.
Oh, thank you.
I remember when we met. It was so wonderful. I even still have a picture of us together holding a little coloring book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on and introducing me to your beautiful community. Thank you.
Thank you. 咁老師話咧，好開心見到我同 Stephen 啦，咁啊，因為佢當日仲留住一張相片啊，就係我哋三個係啦，有佢嘅 coloring book 係啊，佢仲 keep 住呢張相片嘅。So Rosie, welcome to the show, and would love to invite you to share a little bit about your background. You know, how does your journey, come to the destination of Gene Keys?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know that's a long one.
journey.
I know.
That's a very long. How much time do we have?
We've got 45 minutes in this episode, but if we could always extend
A little bit
longer.
That's fine. Well, if I were to distill it, I would say throughout my life, I have been very drawn to service and the therapeutic arts, the healing arts, and also the creative arts. So I went back and forth between studying psychology and counseling, and then experimenting with the visual arts and dance and movement and drama and all kinds of things. And eventually I started to bring them together into the expressive arts therapies. So bringing also Jungian therapy, right? So Jungian psychology, dealing with the unconscious and how there's so many beautiful, wonderful things in the dark. If we dare to lean into them, those difficult feelings, those scary things, those things that have been forbidden to us. And I'm aware of language, so I want to make sure, is this a good time for me to stop and you can do a little translating? Or?
Yes.
咁老師啱啱咧就提到啦，即係喺一個有限嘅時間，佢俾個蒸餾嘅版本我哋咧，佢本身就好早年嘅時候咧，已經本身好想投入服務呢樣嘢啦 ，service 啦，咁啊接觸好多療愈嘅藝術啦 ，healing arts 啦，creative arts 啦，啲創作性嘅藝術啦，心理學啦，
同埋老師本身係一個心理學家嚟嘅。
係啦，咁另外就係接觸容格嘅潛意識啊，咁我好中意老師頭先嘅分享就係，我哋好多嘢係好似打開呢個潘多拉嘅黑盒咧，係啦，裏邊其實有好多寶藏嘅，好多正嘢喺我哋嘅潛意識裏邊嘅，係啦。
咁啊，同埋老師佢啱啱都有講啦，其中一樣嘢佢曾經去修讀過啊，或者經歷嘅就係包括舞蹈啊，一啲drama 啊，即係呢啲都係佢所以融合咗好多唔同嘅藝術嘅方向。其實佢呢一刻係想透過佢所有嘅喺藝術上嘅經歷，再加上佢對心理嘅認知，佢好想匯聚呢一啲嘅精華，然後去變成一種可以協助人哋去睇到自己啊、療愈啊。咁老師啱啱都有講咗一句好重要嘅嘢，佢就話啦，咁其實喺黑暗裏面咧，其實有好多好美麗嘅嘢嘅。咁啊，當我哋願意去感受一啲平日我哋會覺得好困難 嘅感覺嘅時間，其實我哋會對自己、對生命會打開更加一深嘅體會咯。That's
Oh my gosh.
beautiful.
I bet you said that much better than I did.
We just, translate what you said and, based on our understanding of your work and, for the wisdom keepers and the gene keys, we elaborate a little bit more. So to put
Yes.
Everything into context.
I can too. Like what I wanted to say, another big theme in my life has been being real, being an authentic person. And, like everybody, I was taught to be a certain way, that if I was this way, then I would be loved, then I would be successful, all of those things, right? So my path has been very much about, well, who am I really? If I take all of those conditioning messages away, what really lights me up? What is my true authentic self-expression? And so I think because that has always been a theme for me, both for myself and my service for other people, I was very drawn to human design. And I know both of you are as well.
Yep.
And I started studying human design maybe about 18 years ago.
Wow.
About 18 years ago, a long time ago. And that has been in the backdrop of my life in terms of learning to trust my own inner compass as I've moved from the service world, the art world, my family, my friends, my community. And it was through, I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of a timeline. It was through, and the human design, I ended up getting pretty into it. And I wrote about it, I taught it, I integrated psychology into it, I integrated the arts into it to make it very practical for people. And it was through that I encountered Richard Rudd in the Gene Keys. Because he was a human design teacher. He was one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite human design authors.
Yeah.
And I remember I always just kind of kept an eye out for him. Like, oh, what's Richard Rudd doing these days? Because he used his heart and he was more poetic in his expression. And I remember maybe, I don't know how long it was, maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago, I was Googling Richard Rudd. And then I saw a web page that said Gene Keys coming soon. So it didn't come, it wasn't out yet. So I'll let you translate and then I'll keep talking.
Sure. 咁啊，你先我先。
你先啦，因為啱啱老師佢講其中一樣佢喺生命裏面佢自己會好跟隨嘅就係究竟佢係咪做緊最真實嘅自己啊？咁佢啱啱都有講嘅就係我哋成日成長啦，咁啊其實父母啊，我哋嘅社會啊都會教我哋，女仔要點啊，男仔要點啊，你應該點樣樣又你應該成為一個乜嘢嘅人啊？跟住老師成日都會喺度探索就係咁，其實如果我唔係外邊即係一啲制約啦，又或者唔係外邊教我應該要點做嘅話，咁其實我係邊個咧？即係佢好早已經去揾佢自己係邊個，有啲乜嘢會令佢開心啊、着燈啊，即係有啲咩會令佢有動力啊？咁啊，佢原來老師係比我哋早好多嘅，咁啊18年前已經遇上 Human Design 即係人類設計嗰個系統啦。咁佢話透過呢個系統咧，佢就學懂佢點樣樣去跟隨佢嘅內在嘅指引。即係揾到佢裏面個 GPS 啊，咁啊，所以無論喺佢嘅工作，包括藝術啊、朋友啊，咁佢嘅家庭啊，佢喺佢哋嘅社群裏面啊，佢都可以做到自己咯。咁啊，佢亦都話啦，咁啊，佢自己後尾啦，其實佢有寫本書關於 Human Design 嘅，佢有教 Human Design 嘅，甚至咧佢會將佢心理學嘅知識啦，再加藝術啦，融入咗佢嘅教學入邊添。咁就喺嗰度咧，佢遇上咗 Gene Keys 啦，即係基因鎖匙啦嘅創辦人啦，Richard Rudd 啦，咁啊，佢話 Richard 去教或者傳授 Human Design， 同其他嘅老師都幾唔同嘅，因為 Richard Rudd 佢由個心去出發啦，同時間咧佢寫啲嘢咧帶住好多詩意嘅，咁所以老師由 Human Design 去到 Gene Keys 嘅旅程咧就係咁樣開始咯。Well, that's really special. How you came to Yeah, because I already forgot that Richard Richard Rudd, who
was
Yes.
a human design
was
teacher.
a human design
Oh,
teacher.
yeah.
Until you just said that, I'm like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that, because his style, the way he communicates, and the wisdom is completely different from what we have been learning from, Ra and other teachers and the human design system. So, oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And you have been with Gene Keys before it was launched.
Yes. Well, at least before it was launched publicly. He might have been doing things in England at the time, but I was there as soon as he came out with it publicly. And
Wow.
so I've been studying the Gene Keys for a long time, and I integrated it into my work. I gave readings, just like I had given human design readings. And like most things, I eventually want to take these amazing concepts and transform it into something useful for people, something very down to earth. And so I'm just trying to think of how I can integrate the wisdom keepers, how they came in, just to kind of bring that in here.
Yeah.
So let's just say this was maybe like 8 years ago, right before I met you. I had a full private practice. I had a lot of clients. I was working as a psychotherapist, also doing human design readings as well, but also working with couples, working with families, working with people as kind of like a psychotherapist, expressive arts therapist, and spiritual counselor, all of those things. And a lot of crazy things were happening in the world, not that different from what's happening now, where I was noticing a lot of division, a lot of despair. I was actually quite sad. I was very sad and worried about what was happening on the planet. And at the same time, I was a little stressed out in my work because I was just working all the time, serving. And I know both of you know what that's like. And so my husband and my daughter said, Mom, Rosie, you got to do some art. You got to do something. You have to make some art because it's too much output. You have to do something to take care of yourself. And so I didn't have an art studio. I didn't have space for that, right? My whole life was therapy at the time. So they took me to an art store and I got a pad of paper and a black marker. And I started doodling just for myself. I just started doodling. And then I just did one day and it felt really good. It was helping me. And the next day, I thought, what would happen if I made the outline of a face and I doodled inside of it? And that was the Wisdom Keeper of Grace. It was the first one that came to me, this beautiful face. And I was like communing with her. It was from my imagination, or I was channeling it. There was no like conscious, plan, but I felt so healed by her. I felt like she saw me. She understood what was happening in the world. She wasn't worried. She knew that humanity was going to be okay. And I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing. I think I want to do another one. And then I would use my intuition and say, well, who wants to come now? And then I'd get this feeling, oh, someone from Africa wants to come. I'd feel it, it's African woman. And so then I started to draw that and doodled. And then again, this feeling. And then one after the other, these beings came, most of them coming from the spirit world. And each of them had this like peace in their heart. Like I felt that they had been through a lot. They had had suffering in their life and pain, but they found a way to transmute that pain into compassion. That was the one thing they all had in common. And so I just kept going one after the other. And then I said, how many of these am I going to make? And then I thought, well, human design, all the gates, Gene Keys, 64. I'm like, oh, I'll make 64. But it was really just for my own personal healing process. So I'll stop there and then I can keep going.
Stephen, would you mind showing, one of the wisdom keepers so the audience know what Rosie has been creating from just doodling?
Yeah.
That's one of the wisdom keeper.
61.
Of inspiration.
It's really, really beautiful. So let me translate. 咁啊，老師咁佢一路由Richard 老師啦，由嗰個 page 嗰個 website 淨係得 coming soon 嗰兩隻字啦，到嗰本書出嘅時間啦，咁佢一路其實有修讀 Gene Keys 嘅。咁當然啦，其實 Gene Keys 係一個你唔係去讀書嘅系統嚟嘅，係一個你去吸收咗個智慧，然後你融入你自己嘅生活你嘅生命啊。咁老師亦都嗰陣係將呢 Gene Keys 嘅智慧咧帶到去自己嘅工作入邊啦。咁嗰陣咧，其實咧老師喺佢做 Wisdom Keeper 呢張卡之前咧，咁佢本身啱啱都有講啦，其實佢係一個心理學家啦，佢會做好多嘅諮詢啦，包括人類圖嘅諮詢啦，即係人類圖啦諮詢啦，係啦睇圖啦。咁佢亦都會協助啲人透過藝術去協助啲人做一啲內心嘅療愈嘅。咁佢就喺度諗咗好耐我點樣將我識嘅嘢咧可以變成一啲有用啦，跟住啲人可以好輕易咁樣用喺佢哋生活入邊啦。咁所以 Wisdom Keeper 嘅誕生咧，其實喺8年前係啦。當佢做嘢做到好攰，係啦，佢嗰陣好忙，但係咧成日都係哇，我要 serve 世界serve 個 world 佢做得好辛苦嘅時間啦。跟住佢突然間就睇到，哇！原來個世界呢刻好多絕望好多紛爭好多分裂跟住佢就好想去做啲嘢。咁但係嗰陣時佢嘅屋企人佢就同佢講：喂，你已經好做得好辛苦咯，你要開始做一啲嘢去滋養翻自己。咁老師就去買一本簿，跟住買一個 black marker，即係一支筆啦，跟住就開始喺度畫嘢啦。咁畫喺度突然間佢就靈光一觸，不如我畫一個人嗰個框。跟住，然後我喺個框人樣個框入邊畫啲嘢睇下會點啊！咁而第一個Wisdom Keeper 嘅誕生就係咁嚟咯。咁老師就話，因為嗰個 Wisdom Keeper 嗰個智慧嘅傳遞者個樣，佢見到之後，哇！佢發覺嗰個樣咧，好似好帶住智慧啦，好帶住好多愛啦，好帶住好多平安啦。咁同埋嗰個智慧嗰個人咧，其實佢係裡面入邊。曾經個感覺嗰個人係經歷咗好多好多嘢嘅，但係佢哋已經有一個智慧，將一啲佢哋生命嘅痛苦、生命嘅經歷轉化成為慈悲咯。咁所以佢嗰刻覺得，哇！佢見到嗰個智慧嘅傳遞者，佢感覺到好 touch 咁所以佢就開始咁我不如再畫多個啦。咁我畫下咧，咁佢就諗咁我應該畫幾多個咧？越嚟越多咯。跟住就Human Design 有64個 gates，跟住 Gene Keys 有64粒咁咪畫咗64個咯。So I basically just gave them, a background of how the Wisdom Keeper came to life and why did you do 64 of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the beginning, I didn't call them Wisdom Keepers. I called them the 64 Faces of Awakening. It was an art. It turned into an art project. And then I started to share them with other people. And I felt that other people had the same experience that I did, that they would look in the faces and they would feel seen. They would feel cared about. They would feel trusted. And they would feel like we're going to make it. As humans, we're going to make it. And so that's kind of where I thought, and this always happens to me, like I start with this, an art project, and then I'm like, well, how can I help people with this, right? Like it's not enough that it's just art. How can it be used to serve people? And then I started thinking, well, what if I created an oracle deck and shared these stories that I intuitively feel when I look at them? I kind of had it, like I felt their stories, and I put it into an oracle deck. And then I started thinking, okay, well, so I started channeling the stories, just writing the stories down. And all of the stories had some transformation, some struggle, some challenge, some pain, some fear that this person had kind of worked through and ended up in a more open-hearted place. And then I started thinking, wow, what if I connected each of these faces with a gene key, like with an archetype of the gene key, and I connect the stories, right? Because the stories were already archetypal in nature. And so I put all the faces out, and then I started putting like the gene key number by them based on their story. And then once I kind of paired them up, I did a little refining. So I included the spectrum of consciousness words in the story. So does that make sense? So the spectrum of consciousness is you're looking at one archetype from the perspective of the shadow,
Yes.
which is when we're coming from a place of fear, the perspective of the gift, when we're coming from a place of service, and the perspective of Siddhi, when we're coming from the place of universal love or a state of oneness. And so I kind of wove the gene keys into the Oracle deck. And that's when I started calling them the Wisdom Keepers. It was the Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck because they were bringing wisdom to people through their stories and through their questions for contemplation. And I felt that it could be a way to serve the Gene Keys community and the human design community by giving them a way to work with the material that didn't require them to know numbers and lines and channels and gates but stories and faces, because everybody can relate to that. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just for a moment acknowledge both of you for being such amazing listeners and communicators?
Thank you.
I don't know if people, and I hope you translate this for people, but you are phenomenal.
Thank you, Rosie.
I
Thank
can't
you.
believe what you do.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay, continue.
咁老師啱啱分享啦，咁最開頭其實係一個就都聽到啦，佢係一個自我療愈嘅一個過程啦，咁後期就再變成一個我會形容為藝術項目啦，一個 art project 啦。咁因為老師好想大家都聽到，佢好想去將佢自己嗰個好被感動、好被觸碰到嗰個經歷同其他人分享。咁希望其他人都一樣去望到呢啲面孔嘅時間咧，一樣可以開心。因為喺老師製作過程裏邊，頭先你大家都可能聽到就係佢去 tune in 每一個呢啲我哋叫智慧嘅守護者嘅時間咧，佢都感受到有啲人喺生命裏邊有好多唔同經歷，我哋會面對恐懼，我哋會面對悲傷，面對離合。咁但係慢慢將我哋呢啲嘢去轉化嘅時候咧，我哋會去到一個 space 一個地方，就係我哋個心可以打翻開。
咁老師亦都我可以
補
充翻少少啊，因為阿老師有講嘅就係咧，當佢畫咗呢啲面孔，因為開頭唔係叫 Wisdom Keeper 㗎，開頭叫64個面孔，64個覺醒嘅面孔。咁其實嗰陣時咧，老師就將呢啲嘅唔同智慧者嘅面孔啦，咁都會分享俾其他人啦，跟住其他人睇咗咧。佢哋裏面好感覺到，哇！被照顧、被關懷，甚至有個好似好被信任，甚至係有個我叫信心，即係無論佢哋經歷緊啲乜嘢，我哋都會佢裏面突然間有種新嘅力量都應該係可以跨越到嘅自己。咁亦都要講少少，因為咧其實就唔係淨係得64張卡嘅，即係當然啲卡好靚啦。裡面今日嗰本書仔其實係非常之重要嘅，因為老師係帶咗64個 stories， 即係用一個故事嘅形式去講呢每一個64個智慧傳遞者，佢哋究竟佢哋經歷過啲乜啦？即係包括啱啱阿 Stephen 都有講嘅就係。個個都會經歷咗一啲嘅掙扎嘅，個個都會經歷咗一啲痛苦嘅，甚至個個都會經歷咗一啲恐懼添。但係到最後，佢哋點樣轉化咗佢哋嘅經歷，然後咧最尾係打開翻個心嘅。咁老師又覺得呢啲嘅故事同 Gene Keys。突然間，原來佢哋好 match 嘅喎，佢哋有啲聯繫嘅喎，咁跟住老師就可以攤開晒啲樣啦，跟住然後開始就將 Gene Keys 嗰個閘門嘅 number 啦，就開始擺喺嗰啲64個樣嗰度啦，跟住佢就然後再加埋因為喺 Gene Keys 入邊咧，其實意識光譜係啦。意識光譜啦 ，spectrum of consciousness 其實分咗3個部分嘅，包括 shadow gift Siddhi 咁 shadow 就係對應我哋仲係小我我哋未打開嘅時間啦。咁個禮物，即係 Gene Keys 入邊嘅禮物啦，就係講緊我哋去真係做服務，我哋個服務嘅心已經開啟咗啦。咁 Siddhi 當就已經係我哋已經係去翻一個我哋合一 oneness， 大家已經係有宇宙無條件愛嗰個愛嘅狀態啦，咁所以老師其實好好嘅，佢就話，因為 Human Design 咧 Gene Keys 咧其實好多資訊噶嘛，好多資料噶嘛，大家知道 Gene Keys 本書有幾厚噶啦，佢好想用一個好簡單、好 simple 嘅 way 去協助大家都可以去 work with 呢一個能量，而唔需要記咁多資訊咯。
冇錯，就係嗰2個元素，就係面孔同埋故事。
係啊。 Rosie, I was just talking about, how fantastic that you use story and art, which is pretty much how the indigenous, the Dreamtime people, the indigenous tribes and, around the world, that this is how they pass on information, pass on their wisdom. Because when I was, tuning into the Wisdom Keeper energy this morning, it's kind of like you're bringing through all the elders that we have been disconnected. I actually felt that, when Stephen pulled up the card, we are reconnecting with the elder wisdom. That's what you have been tapping into when you channel them.
Thank you so much for feeling that. I think that's very important. And I'm realizing more and more, it's not anything that I consciously think of as what I do, but I think I do that.
Yes, you do.
I think that I'm being used as a conduit for the wisdom that we all carry within us, that we've lost touch with in this modern world. And I know in our next conversation we'll talk more about another project that I've been working with Richard Rudge on, but it's very much about connecting with indigenous wisdom keepers and bringing that wisdom through. And so I think in a way, and I'm looking at my journey, that I may be moving more and more in that direction, more and more towards simple earth wisdom to help us remember who we are, where we come from, and to know that we are all connected. And just stripping away, just like I really feel like I just want to strip away the complexities and bring it into something that anybody can relate to, because we all carry those memories inside. We all really do. And one thing I did notice with the Wisdom Keeper project was that these elders or these spirits or whoever was coming through, knocking on my door, they have their own life. They have their own sense of what's needed. And so none of this was planned. I didn't plan any of this. I wasn't trying to do a big project. I was just trying to heal myself a little bit because I was stressed out. And so first came the Oracle deck. Then I ended up creating a coloring book. The coloring book ended up being a coloring project where I brought the coloring books to homeless shelters, to children with physical and mental disabilities, to my dear friends in Uganda who are working with children and youth who are dealing with the AIDS crisis and orphaned from having lost their parents. It took people dealing with pain management. So suddenly the wisdom keepers were going out and being used by people in all kinds of different situations. Then I ended up doing this video campaign, which you were a part of, which was called The Faith of Love is Universal. And I ended up with people all over the world holding up one of the wisdom keepers and saying in their own language, the faith of love is universal. That connected me to so many amazing people like you doing amazing things in the world. And then it just kept going, like the whole, like one thing led to the next. And I felt that the wisdom keepers, these elders, these spirit guides, these ancestors were guiding me to the right places, to meet the right people, to connect the right people to each other. And that's how I met you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our ancestors are working together to bring us together.
When you
It's
said that,
beautiful
I
synchronicity.
actually felt very touched. It's like we have support. We're not cut off. We're not orphaned. We're not abandoned. We have support.
我諗老師分享咗，我覺得其中一樣我好感動，啱啱佢講到就係話當我哋去同呢啲嘅智慧守護者啦，或者一啲好似當中有原住民嘅一啲智慧嘅長老啦，我諗到老師頭先有一個 point，我先用英文去講 ，the wisdom carry within us， 但係我哋唔記得咗，我哋原來每個人裏邊都係身體裏邊承載咗呢一份嘅智慧喺裏邊，唔係冇，不過我哋唔記得咗 ，lose touch disconnect 咗。咁老師嘅隨後啦就分享啦，咁佢都再重新講，開頭係一個療愈自己嘅一個過程啦，咁然之後就變成咗好多唔同嘅項目啦，咁然之後佢一路好想將頭先佢都提過好複雜好 complex 嘅嘢全部整走晒佢，變成一啲最簡單，每個人都可以即係透過呢個過程裏邊去揾翻裏邊呢份智慧。咁後期就再變成一個 coloring book 啦，即係一個我哋之後有機會再 show 翻俾大家睇，即係一個填色嘅畫冊啦。咁然之後又變成另一個項目啦。咁然之後呢個智慧嘅守護者或者一啲spirit 啦等等咧，就好多共時性嘅嘢發生啦。咁頭先可能大家都會聽到啦。咁呢個計劃一路去到譬如一啲無家可歸嘅一啲homeless shelter 啦。跟住有一啲有殘疾嘅小朋友啦、孤兒啦、愛滋病嘅項目啦，呢啲全部都係老師唔係計劃過嘅嘢嚟嘅，但個宇宙就係咁樣一路指引去將呢啲咁美麗嘅事情就去全世界係啦發生啦。
同埋啱啱咧，老師將嗰個油顏色嗰本畫冊簿咧帶去一啲無家可歸嘅地，即係個 homeless shelter 啊，又或者係啲殘疾嘅小朋友啊，甚至係一啲冇即係已經係被即係遺孤啦、孤兒啦嘅地方啦。佢其中一樣嘢就發覺其實會透過智慧傳遞者 wisdom keeper 可以協助到佢哋去轉化佢哋內在嘅痛苦啊，即係透過油顏色同埋聯繫呢一啲唔同嘅智慧嘅面孔。咁啱啱老師都講嘅就係咧，佢下一個項目啦，其實係好想協助更加多嘅人，因為我哋現代生活，我哋已經同呢啲嘅祖先嘅能量啊，我哋同大地嘅智慧斷咗聯繫啊 ，disconnect 咗。咁佢好想透過一啲好簡單嘅方式，協助我哋記起返其實地球其實都有好多嘅智慧啊，跟住大地嘅其他嘅族群啊。我哋嘅長老啊，其實一路都喺度守護緊我哋咯，所以我哋唔係叫靠自己嘅，其實我哋係一路有力量去支撐住我哋咯。So we were just sharing, what you just said and how that through your work, assisting people, to transform their pain and also to reconnect with all the ancestors, with all the elders, that we are, actually not alone.
Yeah, because we are all in the transition time and the period of huge transformation, and some of the people facing challenges in their life feel like so helpless. So I think the whole project, the ideals, the light, and the transmission is really helping us that we are not alone. I think this is important.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And there are 64 of the wisdom keepers, and they're very different. Some
Yes.
of them are indigenous. Some of them might be someone who works in an office building and is just not into it. Like they're living a half-hearted life and they have to take the risk to leave their job and do something else. There's a child from Tibet who gets taken away because of violence and ends up being a refugee and has to deal with that. Like there are many different human stories. So for me also, the wisdom keepers, because how do I put this? The Gene Keys is a giant synthesis. But what I wanted to bring in was a diversity of humanity, bringing in people from all over the world, many different cultures, different ages, different life experiences, and to celebrate diversity while also remembering that we're all one, that we're all it doesn't matter what religion you come from, what nationality you come from, what your conditioning was. We all have fear and we all have love in us. And we all have the potential to become a very wise, loving, caring, compassionate person. And I think that was another really important message that I wanted to bring. So it's both bringing in the feminine and bringing in a love of diversity, cultural diversity, into the Gene Keys world. So we can feel both everything we have in common and also celebrate how different we are. So, yeah.
資本先。
老師就再講啦，就係佢好想將因為 Gene Keys 係一個好大嘅一個綜合好多唔同智慧嘅系統嚟嘅。咁但係老師想將一啲比較女性化嘅元素咧擺喺裏邊，同埋個重點係佢好想去 share 一個我覺得都好感動嘅 idea，就係 celebrating 我哋要去慶祝咩咧？慶祝你同我係唔同，但係同一時間咧，無論我哋嘅宗教背景啊，我哋係黃種人啊、白種人啊、唔同膚色啊等等，但係其實我哋都係一體嘅 ，we are all one。
咁老師亦都有講啦，咁啊其實64個智慧傳遞者就唔係全部都係嚟自一啲原住民嘅，有啲係平日會喺 office 翻工嘅，係啦，有啲係同原住民嗰啲經歷係冇乜關係嘅，但係佢哋喺生命裏面都會有佢哋嘅自己嘅故事啦。啱啱老師都有講啊，其中有一個故事就係佢係一個來自呢一個西藏嘅小朋友，係啦，咁啊佢嗰陣係被人嚟即係taken away， 即係講點樣講中文？帶走咗啦，離開咗佢嘅出生地啦，佢成為咗難民啊！咁呢個都係其中一個生命故事。所以老師有講過64個智慧傳遞者，佢哋所有嘅生命故事其實都好不一樣嘅。所以都係嘅，即係當我同阿 Stephen 去 work with 個Wisdom Keeper 個 deck 嘅時間，都會發覺每一個生命故事都好唔同，每一個面孔都唔同，但係有64股好唔同嘅智慧等待住我哋每一個人可以去 connect 咯。咁老師又啱啱講就係咧，佢就話希望透過當我哋睇到其實大家有幾唔同，我哋去慶祝大家嘅不同，亦都慶祝大家嘅相同嘅時間。咁亦都會睇到嘅就係我哋每個人都有恐懼入邊，但係我哋每一個人都有愛喺入邊咯。咁好希望就係透過佢而家所創造嘅一啲呢個智慧傳遞者嘅一個我叫項目啦，希望更加多嘅人就係可以揾翻佢內在嘅智慧啦，我哋可以揾到內在嘅愛啦，同時間就係我哋都可以揾到即係去睇到大家嘅不同，從而產生一個慈悲心去面對去我叫佢對應所有嘅而家生活上啊，去面對所有嘅人咯，係。
So beautiful.
I think that's really, really beautiful. Do you have, Rosie, do you have any tips for people, if they want to connect with the deck, how can they start? If they want to work with a wisdom keeper, what is the most important key?
I mean, it could start very simple. If someone has a deck, it could just be holding a question in your heart. Maybe you're sitting with a fear, you're sitting with a challenge in your life, and you want guidance, you want support, right? You're saying we're not alone, right? So you're kind of like, I don't want to feel alone. Please help me, somebody. Let's say, I'm like, for me, for example, I'm going through a heartbreak in relation to my marriage of many, many years. And so I might sit and hold in my heart this deep desire for healing. And then I might call upon a wisdom keeper, say, which wisdom keeper is here to help me heal my heart? It can be that simple. And then I would put all the cards upside down. I mean, you can kind of see this is what they look like on the back. And then I would close my eyes, holding my intention in my heart, and then I would pick the card. And when I pick the card, then I would read the story. And then there's a little passage, which is the gift to us from the wisdom keeper, directly to us. Like, what is the gift that the wisdom keeper has? And then each wisdom keeper also asks questions to help me deepen my inner exploration. And then I would do that. And I would allow my contemplative journey to just kind of percolate inside and allow the insights to come, allow the feelings to come. So that is the most simple thing people can do. But if you have a deck and you're reading the book, you'll see at the end of the book, there are many different spreads that you can do, right? So there might be like a spread where you pick one wisdom keeper to represent the challenge that you're facing. That would be the shadow. And one might be what's in the way of your solving that challenge, right? So like, what's holding you back? What's the obstacle? And then the last one might be, what's the outcome that you want? Keepers are not here to predict the future. They're here to invite us into a deep, self-reflective journey that when we really allow ourselves to feel whatever we feel and let whatever needs to come up, then suddenly we start to feel our answers. You know, we start to feel a direction form. But there are a lot of tips inside the deck to help people work with it, many different creative ways. But really, the essence is to trust your intuition. Sometimes, too, like you might want to just look at the faces and pick the one that really speaks to you, the one that you're like, oh, wow, that I feel connected to this being. What does this being have to say to me? Or you could pick a face that you're kind of like, I'm not sure that's for me, right? Because often the ones that we resist have a great gift for us. That's the shadow, right? And it can be the people, like in our life, the people we're attracted to, the people we're repelled by, the people we idealize. They're all reflecting parts of us that we had to push away, that maybe it's time to bring forth so that we can become more whole. So does that answer your question? I know I'm just kind of, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Very much.
咁我開始最簡單嘅方式先啦。咁啊，老師話，因為所有嘢就係要簡單。咁最簡單嘅方式就係或者有啲朋友可能你哋已經用緊呢副卡啦。你生命裏邊呢一刻，你感受到可能有啲咩挑戰，或者有啲咩問題你想問嘅。誠心將佢你當擺喺你心口度啦，咁你就發問呢個問題啦。咁然之後你就真係去抽一張卡 ，OK。咁然之後咁你啲卡頭先老師講過佢全部係反轉，咁你咪反轉喺你嘅台前邊啦。咁你揀一張，咁然之後你就望住佢啦。咁同一時間咧，因為頭先老師都講過有本書就係㗎嘛。咁所以你抽完張卡，你去聯繫嘅時候咧，第二個步驟就係你可以去讀裏邊個故事，因為全部有個故事喺度嘅。咁然之後，老師頭先亦都提過咧，其實咧，你本書仔裏邊咧，呢邊會有大概有6-7條問題啦，協助我哋去進行嗰個我哋叫做沉思 contemplation 嘅過程裏邊。咁啲答案咧就會慢慢咁蒸餾出嚟，你會更加清晰知道個智慧守護者裏邊係有啲乜嘢嘅啟示俾你。
我要補充翻一個 point 咧，當我哋問完問題嘅時間咧，老師叫我哋真係靜落嚟嘅，因為佢話但係好多時啲方向啊嘅答案啊係會透過內在嘅感覺而出現嘅。咁所以好重要嘅就係咧，當我哋去聯繫嘅時間啦，容許所有嘅感覺要出現嘅時間俾佢出現，要浮現嘅時間俾佢浮現，要經歷嘅都俾佢咁經歷咯。咁同埋老師啱啱都有講嘅本書仔後面咧，其實去到後邊有啲好多嗰啲 spread 即係講緊用啲卡嘅唔同嘅嗰啲叫乜嘢？
牌陣
牌陣係我講個字好勁，係啦，就有唔同嘅牌陣嘅，咁啊唔同嘅牌陣可能會 support 唔同嘅人去用呢副卡啦。咁老師亦都有講嘅就係咧，有時再簡單啲係啦，唔牌陣啦，唔抽牌啦，唔睇故事啦，佢咪開咗64副卡，你咪睇下每一張入邊邊一個智慧傳遞者，你見到佢嗰個容貌。喂，好有感覺喎！喂，好有聯繫喎！咁你咪去睇下，其實佢代表啲乜嘢咯？又或者你見到64張卡入邊有一個樣咧，好唔中意嘅，你見到佢就好唔舒服嘅，咁就啱啦。因為你越抗拒越唔中意嗰啲樣咧，其實係代表可能嗰個智慧傳遞者其實係帶咗一份更加大嘅禮物俾你嘅。因為啱啱老師都講啦，即係我哋緊嘅生活裏邊有啲人我係中意，有啲人唔中意噶嘛。但係偏偏咧，我哋唔中意同唔中意係啦，我哋傾慕啊，我哋信任啊，我哋好討厭啊，其實所有呢啲其實都係反映緊我哋入邊一啲嘢嘅。咁所以啦，特別就係一啲我哋好抗拒嘅人啦，其實亦都係代表住我哋裏邊嘅一部分嘅。咁所以老師就邀請大家，如果想再簡單啲嘅，直接連結嗰64個容貌， 係啊，一個64個容貌係完全係冇言語，唔需要你有任何言語嘅能力，直接去對望，直接去聯繫，你可能會透過呢個方式都會發掘咗你自己一啲嘢咯。So that was really beautiful. I think what you offer is something very simple for people to start with. And I just, emphasize on, connecting with the faces. If someone, language, might be too much for them, simply just connect with the face of the wisdom keeper. They will still get a lot out of it, even though, they might not be able to verbalize it, but, the sensations and the feelings, the connection will still help us to reveal what has to be revealed.
It's so true. That's how it started for me.
係
It
啊，
was
老師
just
都
the
係咁開
face.
始。Yes.
Just the face. I didn't need the words. I didn't need the story. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. So thank you, Rosie, for sharing about Wisdom Keeper with us today. 咁啊，今日好多謝老師啦，佢為我哋分享咗呢64個智慧傳遞者啦。咁好希望即係呢刻聽到有聯繫嘅朋友，咁啊，如果你想購買嘅話，可以去翻New Earth Store 嗰度，咁啊之後就可以購買啦。咁啊，繼續我哋好希望64個智慧傳遞者可以為大家喺呢個轉化嘅時間入邊帶嚟一啲滋養啦，帶嚟一啲支援啦，帶嚟一啲啟發咯。所以啊，多謝大家今日收睇啊！咁今日集嘅時間去到呢度，咁啊，我哋下次再見，拜拜。
拜拜。